Welcome, future barristers. Today we are going to tackle one of the most critical and frankly one of the most examinable rules in Queensland pleadings, UCPR Rule 166. Seriously, get this right and you build a fortress for your client. But get it wrong, you could literally hand the other side of victory on a silver platter. So, let's dive in.
But before we even crack open the rulebook, I want you to think about this question. What is the most dangerous silence in litigation? What do you think happens when you just fail to respond to a factual allegation? The answer is precisely why Rule 166 exists, and trust me, it's a trap you absolutely have to learn to avoid.
All right, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that deemed admission trap. Then we'll look at the tools you have to fight it, denial versus non-admission. We'll get into the specific rules for pleading a non-admission, and then the absolute core of it all, the direct explanation requirement. After that, we'll look at some common pitfalls and finish up with a checklist to make sure you nail this every single time.
Okay, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the single biggest threat you face when you're responding to allegations in a pleading. I'm talking, of course, about the deemed admission.
Here it is, the core principle, right from UCPR Rule 16, Subrule 1. Let it sink in. If you are silent on a factual allegation, the court doesn't just ignore it. The court treats it as if you admitted it. It's called a deemed admission. In the eyes of the court, your silence is basically you nodding along saying, yep, that's true, even if you never ever intended to.
So how do you avoid falling into this massive trap? Well, Rule 166 gives you a toolkit, but you've really only got two options in it, a denial or a non-admission. Let's break down when to use which.
And choosing the right tool here is absolutely critical. You use a denial when you have a positive belief, when you are confident that an allegation is just plain untrue. On the other hand, you use a non-admission when you've done your homework, you've made reasonable inquiries, but you still genuinely remain uncertain about whether it's true or not.
Now, pleading a non-admission. It is not some get-out-of-jail-free card. You can't just say, I don't know, and walk away. No, UCPR Rule 16.6, Subrule 3, sets out three very specific hurdles you have to clear first.
See, a non-admission requires work. Under Rule 166, Subrule 3, you have to be able to show you've done three things. 1, you actually made inquiries. 2, those inquiries were reasonable in the circumstances. And 3, after all that digging, you genuinely remain uncertain. If you fail any one of these three steps, your non-admission is totally invalid. And, you guessed it, it becomes a deemed admission.
And this is a big one, especially for your exams, so listen up. UCPR Rule 166, Subrule 6 creates what's called a continuing obligation. This means if new information comes to light later in the case that clears up your uncertainty, you must amend your pleading to either admit or deny the fact. A non-admission is not a permanent set-it-and-forget-it position.
Okay, now we get to the absolute heart of the rule, the part where almost everyone trips up. This is the direct explanation requirement, and it comes from UCPR Rule 166, Subrule 4. And get this, it applies to both denials and non-admissions. This is where most pleadings go wrong.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from Cape York Airlines explains the purpose perfectly. As Justice Dobney put it, Rule 1664 forces you to expose your rationale early. In plain English, the rule compels you to answer the question, okay, you're disputing this fact, why? It's all about narrowing the real issues for trial.
And the consequence for failing to give that explanation, well, it's severe. Under UCPR Rule 166, Subrule 5, if your explanation is deemed insufficient, your denial or your non-admission just fails. And what happens then? You are deemed to have admitted the allegation. The trap snaps shut.
So let's make this really practical. Look at that first example, the bad one. The allegations are denied. That is a bare denial, and it is an automatic fail under Rule 1664. You must provide the why. For a good denial, you see the magic word, because. The defendant denies because. For a non-admission, you explain why you're unsure. That because part is the direct explanation.
So, we've seen the theory. Now let's look at a few classic mistakes, a real what not to do guide straight from the case law. These are the exact kinds of things that you'll need to spot on your bar exam.
This table lays out three huge pitfalls. First, the vague justification. As we saw in Pollock v. Theus, saying something is a matter for the court is not a direct explanation. You're just kicking the can down the road.
Second, the simple contradiction. Groves tells us that just stating the negative of what's alleged is not enough. And finally, and this is a big one, the impermissible alternative. Green v. Pearson slammed the doors shut on pleading that you either do not admit or deny. You have to pick a lane. You either deny or you do not admit. You can't do both.
So, that's a lot to take in, I know. How do you pull it all together in practice, or when you're sitting in that exam room with the clock ticking? Well, here is your Rule 166 checklist.
Okay, here it is. Your 6 steps for every single allegation you face. Number 1, the golden rule. Never be silent. That's Rule 166.1. 2, choose your tool. Is it a denial or a non-admission? 3, if you pick non-admission, you gotta jump through those 3 hoops from Rule 166.3. 4, and this is the big one, always provide that direct explanation from Rule 166.4. 5, make sure that explanation is right there with the denial or non-admission. And finally, number 6, remember it's not over. That continuing obligation under Rule 166.6 is always there. Follow these steps and you'll be safe.
So let's end with this question. Rule 166 isn't just some boring technicality. It's the rule that prevents trial by ambush. Master it and your pleading becomes a shield, a fortress that protects your client. But get it wrong and you might just plead the other side's case for them. The choice is yours. Good luck.